Okay, I want to introduce the conditional if, else if, and else statements, and I want to do that by showing you what a two-branch conditional looks like. In other words, there will be two cases to consider, and if we consider two different cases, it turns out there's two different ways that can happen. So the first way I'm going to call two-branch conditional mutually exclusive. And in order to explain that, let's say I had a list of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I wanted to go through those numbers and put the numbers from L that are even in one list. So let's call that first list evens. We'll make that an empty list. It's going to be an accumulator, as you're going to see. And I'm going to make the second list odds. Now, an integer can be either an even or an odd, not both. And so this would be an example of a mutually exclusive event. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to traverse L with a for loop for num and L. And here comes the conditional. If the number is even, okay, so the number is even, well, that's a condition, and so I'm going to put inside these parentheses here, I'm going to put a Boolean condition. It'll be evaluating to either true or false, and the condition for being even is %2 equals 0. Okay, that's going to evaluate to be either it's going to be true if num is even and false otherwise. Okay, let's put a comment here. If num is even, well, if num is even, what I want to do is that I want to put num into evens, and so I'm going to go evens, which we've initialized to be an empty list, dot append, and that was in the last YouTube, num. Now, since these two conditions, being even or being odd, are mutually exclusive, I don't need another if here. All I really need to do is to do an else. And so if it isn't even, it's going to be odd. And so I'm going to put a statement here to that extent, to that effect. If num is not even, num is odd. And in that case, I take the odds list, which I've again initialized to be 0, to be empty, and I'm going to dot append num into that list. Okay, so evens now contains 2, 4, 6, and 8. Those are all the even numbers in the above list, and odds contains 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. If I wanted to know how many evens there were in that list, I could len evens 4. And if I wanted to know how many odds were in the list L, I could len odds 5. Okay, now there is another way to code this, and so let me just show you another way you could do that. You could do this. You could go even, so I'm going to reinitialize evens and odds to be empty lists, and then I'm going to Alt P back to the code that I had. I'm going to traverse the list here, but I'm going to do it slightly differently. So I'm going to leave this if, but instead of doing the else, another way you could do this is you could go else if. So if I have an else, I don't need a condition. If I have an else if, I have to have a condition. And the condition is going to be, I'm just going to copy this and then modify it down here. Num %2 is not equal to 0. Okay, so that would mean the number isn't even. And so if the number isn't even, it's odd. And so this would have, so let's run it and just verify it's going to have the same effect as what I did above. So here is evens, same as before, and here's odds, same as before. And so they both work, but since they're mutually exclusive events, I can do it with an if-else. If I do it with an if-else-if, I have to put this extra condition in. It's syntactically incorrect if you don't follow the else-if with a condition. So two ways to do mutually exclusive events. The simpler or more logical way is to do an if-else. The somewhat redundant way is to do an if-else-if.